The Union of the Soviet Socialist Republics, also called the Soviet Union, occupies 1/5 of the world. It stretches from Central Europe to the Pacific Ocean. In such a huge country, we expect to find differences in surface, soil, climate, and ways of living. Here are farmlands in temperate regions, mountainous lands covered with forest, cold lands in the far north where few people live, Arctic regions of barren frozen wasteland, other regions of hot desert wasteland, and level farmlands of black fertile soil. Here most of the food is produced for the people of the Soviet Union. In this vast country live more than 200 million people. Most of them are Slavs, similar to other Slavonic people in many parts of Central and Eastern Europe. But there are also many Asiatic people. The people of the Soviet Union speak many different languages and dialects. Let us see where most of the people live. The densest population is here, in the western part of the country. Why is this? Perhaps we can find the answer by looking more closely at these 4 major zones or belts. These show the main differences in climate and soil. The most northerly belt is the tundra, bordering the Arctic Ocean. Few people live in this region, which has not many trees and is covered most of the year with ice and snow. As in Alaska and other far north lands, the tundra in Russia is the home of nomadic people. Some of the tundra nomads are hunters and trappers, others are reindeer herders. This herd in Siberia is at the edge of the forest zone. Just south of the frozen tundra is a vast forest belt. Along the northern edge of this zone are coniferous or evergreen forests. Here, as in the tundra, some of the people are hunters and trappers. Ermine, sable and mink are among the animals trapped for their valuable fur. In other parts of the evergreen forest, lumbering is the main activity. Even women work at the heavy task of logging. Big trees like this one will be cut into planks. Smaller trees will be ground up into pulpwood. Sometimes timber is loaded onto sledges and transported across the snow to timber and pulp mills. Often logs are fastened together to form huge rafts. In spring, when the ice is melted, the rafts are guided down the swift rivers to timber mills. Much timber is sold to other countries. In some parts of the forest belt, timber is being cleared to make way for settlements. The Soviet government has sent people to these northern lands to build new homes. New settlements, such as this one, are usually state farms, built by the Soviet government in undeveloped lands. State farms are supervised by the government. This state farm produces potatoes, a crop that can be grown in northern lands. Although some hardy crops are being introduced into the northern forest belt, this is where most of the food of the Soviet Union is grown. In the Black Earth area, a region of black soil. The densest population is here. Much of this area is in the Ukraine, part of the Soviet southwest. The rich black earth is the kind we find in the Middle West of America, but this land, like all the land in the Soviet Union, is owned by the government. Small farms were taken by the government and merged into huge collective farms. The collective farms are about 1,000 acres each. More and more machinery is being manufactured and used, and equipment such as this combine is provided by the government. On the collective farms, people are employed in groups called brigades. This brigade is harvesting wheat, one of the most important grain crops in the Soviet Union. On the huge collective farms, there is work to be done even in winter. On some farms, dairy cattle are kept. These cattle are not raised in large numbers because there is not enough grain to fatten them. Milk and dairy products from this farm go to people in nearby cities. The government want to increase the production of pigs and other livestock so that there will be more meat available. To increase production, better animals are being bred, and people are being taught how to care for them. South of the Black Earth region is a small peninsula called the Crimea. Protected from cold north winds by mountains and warmed by the waters of the Black Sea, this peninsula has a Mediterranean-type climate where crops such as grapes are grown. Vineyards stretch across the warm Crimean landscape, and we find people harvesting grapes as we might see them at work in Mediterranean lands. Among the hills along the Black Sea, tea is grown. Tea, the national drink of the Soviet Union, is an important crop. We have now seen agriculture in the rich Black Earth region and in the subtropical lands along the Black Sea. East of the Caspian Sea is a vast region of dry steppes and desert. The steppes are treeless plains, but usually there is enough moisture for grass. Traditionally, the vast steppes have been used for grazing. Shepherds still wear the typical sheepskin hats they have for centuries. Today, all herds are collectively owned under government control. In some places in the steppes, large rivers from Central Asia flow into the dry land. The rivers provide water for irrigating some of the steppes and deserts. Irrigated land can be very productive and produces important crops such as cotton. This cotton is being gathered in Burspek, a part of Soviet Central Asia. These Oriental people remind us that much of the Soviet Union is in Central Asia. From Soviet Central Asia comes most of the country's cotton. In recent years, production of cotton has been greatly increased. The government is trying to grow enough cotton for its own textile mills. Some cotton is brought by camel caravan from the fields to nearby cities such as Samarkand, or to other trading centers across the desert. The government is trying to make use of such undeveloped desert regions. This surveyor is helping to lay out the route of a new railway, which will have to cross vast empty lands to reach distant cities. Many more railways are needed to reach undeveloped lands and also to carry raw materials to factories usually located near sources of power. The most important source of power is coal, and the Soviet Union has many widely distributed coal deposits. The main deposits are in the Donetsk Basin in Europe and in Kuznetsk in Central Asia. Coal mining is always hard, dirty work, but coal is necessary for an industrial country. But coal is not enough to build heavy industry. Iron is needed as well. Places where coal and iron are found close together are most favorable for manufacturing steel. Such a place in the Soviet Union is the Ural Mountains. One of the industrial centers here is Magnitogorsk, where much steel is manufactured. In the Ural Mountains, miners dig iron ore and other metals which are used in heavy industry. Besides iron ore, nickel, manganese and chromium are mined. A load of iron ore is going by cable to the great steel mills of Magnitogorsk. This is one of the great industrial centers built in the Urals, built to produce steel. Steel, which has been called the backbone of modern industry. Less than 50 years ago, Russia was an agricultural country. Now her production is comparable to that of Britain, Germany, and the other older steel-making countries. The government has ordered many factories to concentrate on producing heavy goods, such as electrical machinery and many kinds of factory equipment. The goal is ever greater and greater production. Workers have high quotas of production to fill. There are plans to increase output, and production is rising not only in steel, but oil and other necessities for industry. The Soviet Union is one of the world's leading oil producers. There could be little modern industry without petroleum products, such as petrol and lubricating oil. And there could be little modern industry without electricity. The Soviet people are building hydroelectric projects. Dams on many of the rivers provide much water power that is used for electricity. With electric power, more factories, such as this textile mill, can be built. Russia is now able to produce more consumer goods, which have been scarce in the past. Until recently, there were few motor vehicles produced, but now more are being made. Even so, very few workers in the Soviet Union own cars. We will find cars and trucks on the city streets, but there are few good highways between the cities. Railways are still the chief means of long-distance transport for both people and goods. But the country is so huge that the trip from Leningrad on the west coast across country to Vladivostok on the Pacific takes about 9 days. To speed travel, the government is developing more air transport. Waterways are still used extensively for transport. The Volga River is still the most important navigable river in the country. In addition to the Volga, there are many other large rivers, but most of them flow northward into the cold Arctic Ocean. Ports on these rivers are icebound most of the year. An important port with access to Western countries is Leningrad on the Baltic Sea. Even the port of Leningrad must be kept open by icebreakers so that it can be used during the winter season. A warm water port on the Mediterranean or the Pacific has long been the ambition of Russia from the time of the Tsars to the present communist government. The Soviet government was established during World War I. Since that time, 16 republics have been established. The largest of these is Russia, containing more than half the Soviet people. Within Russia is Moscow, biggest city and the capital of the Soviet Union. Moscow was founded about 800 years ago. In recent years, it has grown very fast. It has become a modern city of big buildings and wide boulevards. Soviet citizens are very proud of their growing capital, with its underground, which has become world famous. Soviet citizens learn of the achievements and the plans of the government, mostly through government-controlled newspapers. Here they may read, for instance, of the meeting of the Council. The Council is called the Supreme Soviet. The representatives, called deputies, are nominated by the Communist Party. The Communist Party is the only political party allowed. Applauding the leaders is a common custom in the Soviet Union. Education has been given great importance. There is a well-organized system of schools. Students who do well will later be sent to free universities to specialize in subjects chosen by the state. The greatest stress is put on science and engineering. Soviet leaders know that a country with high technical skills can become a leader in the modern world. Look at the intense faces of these pupils and their teacher. Education here is a serious business. Fields of education are open to Soviet girls and women, and many enter the sciences, including atomic research. Atomic research is regarded as of paramount importance to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union bases its industrial expansion upon atomic energy, and it is upon this rapid industrial expansion that it hopes to raise the standard of living of its vast population to the level of that of the countries of the West. Organization, discipline, and years of toil by millions of people are creating many great changes in the Soviet Union. How the Soviet people use their vast natural resources, their rapidly growing industries, and ever-increasing population is important to all of us. For the future will show whether or not they will continue the rapid development of this enormous territory and remain one of the